What Genghis Khan did wasn't a cure for his wounds, but rather an investment in them. The child who experienced hunger never believed in unconditional loyalty. The boy betrayed by his tribe didn't trust emotional bonds within power. The captive publicly humiliated understood that humiliation was a tool, but its unregulated use produces chaos, not governance. Here begins the decisive leap. Genghis Khan didn't build his power on the question, "Who belongs to me?" but on a more dangerous question, "Who deserves to be with me?" In a world where leadership was the exclusive domain of blood and lineage, he dismantled the system at its very foundation. The chieftain's son was no longer protected, nor was the tribal elder above accountability, nor was the relative given precedence over the most capable. This transformation wasn't ethical, it was cold pragmatism. The man who saw the tribe abandon him decided that the tribe, as a concept, was unfit for governance. And the alternative, a system that clearly rewards obedience, punishes treason without hesitation, and grants promotion based on deed, not name. And here lies the genius unseen in scenes of bloodshed. Genghis Khan understood that fear alone does not build a state. Fear subdues, but it does not sustain. Therefore, he divided terror and justice with the precision of a surgeon. He was harsh with those who rebelled, but steadfast with those who obeyed. And he was so clear that the soldier knew exactly when to be rewarded, when to be killed, and why. This clarity is what transformed terror into an administrative tool, not a fit of violence. And here lies the essential difference between him and most tyrants. Genghis Khan was not chaotic, but psychologically disciplined. Every bloody decision was calculated, and every massacre was a message, not an explosion. Through this mechanism, personal wounds were transformed into a political system, and individual anger into an institution. And the moment his authority became based on rules, not whims, the empire began. But, and here the inevitable comparison begins, Napoleon, unlike Genghis Khan, began to lose this discipline when he was surrounded by those who wouldn't tell him, "You're wrong." And then, it was no longer the system that ruled, but the leader's ego. And here, and only here, did the countdown begin. Many believe that Genghis Khan began by conquering and then built the system. The truth is quite the opposite. A system of meritocracy instead of classism. In his world, it didn't matter who you were, but what you did. The incompetent commander was dismissed, and the competent soldier was promoted. This alone broke the traditional tribal structure, where a leader was followed because he was the son of so-and-so, not because he deserved it. Genghis Khan was intolerant of lying, manipulation, concealing the truth. But on the other hand, he encouraged dissent if it was based on reality. This detail is very important because it is historically rare. The Yasa law. He did not rule according to whims, and he did not change the rules to suit his interests. One law, for everyone. Here we observe that what appeared brutal on the outside was terrifyingly disciplined on the inside. Why didn't his men betray him? The question that destroys most empires. Why do commanders turn against their leader? The answer is often injustice, fear, lack of vision. Genghis Khan mitigated these three factors. His men were not silent out of fear, but disciplined out of conviction. And this is a crucial difference. A leader who fears his men needs repression. A leader who respects them needs only order. And that is why, after his death, the empire did not collapse immediately, because it was not based on him alone. The Yasa. The law that preceded the state. The Yasa was not a constitution written on paper, nor a law taught in temples, nor a moral system claiming mercy. The Yasa was something far more dangerous, a law of survival designed to govern. Genghis Khan did not create the Yasa because he loved laws, but because he distrusted people when power was left unchecked. This stemmed directly from his childhood. The man who saw the tribe betray him, the lineage fall, and force be used without restraint, understood one truth early on: power, if not restrained, will descend into chaos. Therefore, the Yasa was simple in form, but harsh in its application. What did the Yasa actually address? It didn't address Crime, in a moral sense, but rather three deadly dangers to any empire. Treason, anarchy, privilege. Treason, the unforgivable crime in the Yasa system. Treason was not discussed, not justified, not postponed. The punishment was immediate, and often death. Not only because Genghis Khan was bloodthirsty, but because he understood that tolerating even one act of treason was an open invitation for the collapse of the entire system. Anarchy, the invisible enemy. The Yasa regulated the smallest details, the distribution of spoils, military obedience, relationships between soldiers, even hunting and conduct in the camp. Why? Because armies don't always collapse in battle, but in the chaos of daily life. The law here wasn't moral, but operational. Privilege, the slow poison. The most dangerous thing in any emerging state is for some to feel they are above the law. The Yasa did not recognize the leader's son, the tribal chief, the one of noble lineage. Everyone was under the law, and the punishment was the same. This is precisely what made the soldiers obey, not out of love, but out of trust that the system would not betray them. Why did the Yasa succeed? For a very simple, yet rare, reason: it was applied to everyone, without exception. Genghis Khan himself was subject to it, and he executed close commanders when they violated it. Here we see the fundamental difference between a law that is enacted, and a law that is enforced. The Yasa was not created to appear just, but to be clear. And clarity, in the world of power, is more powerful than vague mercy. A silent comparison with Napoleon. Important. Napoleon established great laws, the civil code, but over time, he began to exempt himself, and surround his decisions with subjectivity and prestige. Genghis Khan did the opposite. He did not allow the law to be weakened for the sake of the leader. Therefore, his machine continued to operate even after his death. To understand Genghis Khan, you must understand 12th century Central Asia. A world without states. The region was not composed of states, but rather tribes, temporary alliances, frequent betrayals. Power was not inherited, it was seized. The law of the jungle: today your ally, tomorrow your killer, the day after tomorrow he will marry your widow. In this world, mercy is weakness, and trust is risk. When Temujin's father was killed, the tribe showed no sympathy. Instead, they abandoned him, his mother, and his siblings to starve. This experience instilled in him a central idea: reliance on people without order is suicide. People think Genghis Khan was a primitive dictator. The truth is, he was a rigorous organizer. Breaking the tribal structure, he abolished hereditary privileges. He divided the army into units. Each unit comprised men from different tribes. The goal: to sever tribal loyalty, and bind it to the system. Strict meritocracy: a leader who fails is immediately dismissed. A leader who succeeds is immediately rewarded. No prior history, no past glory, no family name. This alone is why the traditional elites hated him. Information network: Genghis Khan relied on scouts, merchants, spies, ambassadors. He knew trade routes, internal conflicts, political weaknesses. Before any invasion, he knew more about himself than his opponent. Most leaders fall from within. Genghis Khan understood this danger early on. The law is above all. The Yasa applies to leaders, applies to their sons. No exceptions. Distribution of spoils. Spoils do not go to the leader alone. Fair distribution equals lasting loyalty. Allowing criticism. Yes, he was harsh. But honest advice is permitted. Warnings are welcome. And here we lay the first stone in the Napoleonic comparison. What was the Khwarezmian Empire? The Khwarezmian Empire was not a tribe, nor a small principality, but one of the most powerful states in the Islamic world at the beginning of the 13th century. Its geography spanned a vast area encompassing present-day Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Iran, Afghanistan, parts of Iraq, and parts of Kazakhstan. Its capital was Urgench, and among its most important cities were Bukhara, Samarkand, Merv, and Nishapur, cities that were centers of science, trade, and culture at that time, not peripheral towns. At the head of this empire was Ala ad-Din Muhammad Khwarezmshah, an ambitious ruler who rapidly expanded his empire, but governed with a personal, rather than institutional, mindset. And here begins the disaster. Why did Genghis Khan clash with the Khwarezmians? This is a crucial point that must be understood. Genghis Khan did not begin the war with the Khwarezmian Empire with the intention of conquest. Initially, he sought a trade and political relationship. He sent an official trade caravan, then a diplomatic delegation, according to the customs of the time. But the governor of Otrar accused the caravan of espionage and killed the merchants. When Genghis Khan demanded the governor's surrender for accountability, Khwarezmshah made a fatal mistake. He killed the ambassadors. In the logic of that era, killing ambassadors was a declaration of all-out war. Here, the conflict transformed from a political dispute into a systematic war of extermination. Why was this campaign pivotal? The campaign against the Khwarezmian Empire was not merely a new conquest, but a transformation in Genghis Khan's own mindset. For the first time, he faced a large, centralized state with an organized army, fortified cities, and an established administrative system, and his response was shocking. He cleverly divided his army, struck the cities one by one, using terror as a strategic message, not blind rage. Cities like Bukhara and Samarkand were not only destroyed, but politically reshaped. As for Khwarezmshah himself, he fled from city to city, until he died alone on an island in the Caspian Sea. Here we see the difference between a state dependent on the person of the ruler and an empire based on a system. Genghis Khan is not a mystery because we don't know what he did, but because we refuse to believe how he did it. History sums him up in one word: destruction. But destruction alone cannot create an empire stretching from China to Eastern Europe, nor can it rule over peoples of different languages, religions, and cultures. The question that must be asked honestly is, why did entire peoples obey a man who was not one of them? This is where we begin. Genghis Khan built a system that allowed for correction, separated prestige from infallibility before being told, "You are wrong." Napoleon confused prestige with infallibility, was accustomed to always being right, turned his genius into an intellectual prison, and the result. Genghis Khan expanded without becoming isolated. Napoleon became isolated before he fell. Final conclusion, reflection: history doesn't only punish failed leaders. It also punishes leaders who listen only to themselves. The most dangerous thing a leader faces is not the enemy, but the moment when he is surrounded by silence. Napoleon Bonaparte was no ordinary leader. He was an exceptional mind on the battlefield. But here lies the problem that Napoleon's supporters don't like to hear. Genius, if left unchecked, creates a bubble. With repeated victories, those around him began to choose their words carefully. Warnings began to soften. The truth began to be presented as a suggestion. In the Russian campaign, the danger was not unknown. It was known. But it was not met with sufficient resolve. Napoleon was not defeated because he was ignorant. He was defeated because he was not strongly opposed. Napoleon understood war, but he did not understand the psychological end of power. Over time, decisions were reviewed less. Dissent was considered skepticism. The commander became an icon. In the Russian campaign, supply reports were clear. The weather was known. Distances were calculated, but there was no one to tell him, stop. And that is the crucial difference. History doesn't care about the intentions of leaders. It only cares about, did they build a system to correct their mistakes, or not? Genghis Khan built a system too strong to collapse. Napoleon built a glory too fragile to be criticized. And here, the great fall. The story of Genghis Khan is not just a story of bloodshed, nor a story of conquest, nor even a story of military genius. It is the story of a man who understood something simple and rare. That power is not measured by the strength of the leader, but by the system's ability to survive its mistakes. Genghis Khan was not the most merciful of leaders, but he was among the most aware that humans err, and that leaders are the first to do so. That is why he built a law above himself, a system that did not need a permanent genius at the top, and a governing apparatus that would function even after its owner's disappearance. As for Napoleon, He was truly a genius and a great reformer, but at a crucial moment, he began to trust himself more than the system. And when the leader becomes the state, his mistakes transform into a national catastrophe. Russia did not bring down Napoleon alone, just as the sword did not create Genghis Khan alone. The real difference lay in the understanding of power. And here, perhaps, history doesn't just speak of the past. It poses a question to us today: are we looking for a strong leader? Or for a system that doesn't collapse when the leader makes a mistake? History answers in silence, but at a lasting price.